Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Tamara, and joining me today is author Samantha Downing, the author of the Instant USA Today bestseller, My Lovely Wife. She's also written many twisty, drama-filled novels, including He Started It and For Your Own Good. Today, she's here to share her latest thriller, A Twisted Love Story, released July 18th. Welcome back, Samantha.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you again.
Yes, it's been a while. So you guys, if you are new to the podcast, she was on in 2019 with her first book. And if you want to check out that podcast episode, it's available right now. So since it's been a while, tell me what you've been doing since we've last spoke.
Writing a lot.
It's a lot.
Yes, definitely writing a lot. And this is the result. I had a book before this that I actually threw out and wrote this one instead. So A Twisted Love Story is now out and available.
I read this and I have to say I was shocked and amazed by all the things going on with these characters. And I'm going to pick your brain a little bit today.
Okay. Fair enough.
All right. So before we jump in, can you tell us a little high level about A Twisted Love Story?
Sure. In A Twisted Love Story, the primary focus is the relationship between Wes and Ivy. They have a tumultuous on and off relationship for 10 years, and it really drives the whole story of the book. They're a bit like a tornado, and they sort of barrel through life, and people get caught up in their whirlwind, and some are innocent, some are not, and sometimes very bad things happen, including death. And now they have a detective coming after them and thinks something is up with this relationship, and that's where the book begins.
Okay, so can you tell us like how you went through the process of kind of exploring this topic of a toxic relationship?
I had written a book before this, the one that I threw out, and it had a small part of it that was about an on and off relationship like this. And I thought that was kind of the most interesting part, and it kind of hit me. What if I tried to write a thriller that was about a relationship? And what if I tried to make the relationship itself a character? And that was really what I was trying to do in this book, is Wes and Ivy are individuals, but when they come together, they become something else. And that relationship has its own characteristics. So that was my writing goal, if you could say, for this book. And I don't actually use the word toxic. I know a lot of people do, but I wanted the book left open for people to interpret how they want to interpret the relationship, whether you think it's toxic or, like I say, it's like a tornado, or it's twisted, or it's abusive, or whatever word you want to use. That is totally up for readers to decide.
Yeah, I agree with that. They're definitely a tornado and twisted. Yeah, I agree with both of those. So in this case, I guess the plot came first, then the characters.
Sort of the idea that it was going to be a relationship, a very roller coaster on-off relationship. And then I created Wes and Ivy.
To me, when I read it, I kind of felt that Wes and Ivy were really codependent. They're both equally crazy. And I've got to imagine you had to do some research on relationships to manage that. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I did. And they actually don't have the only relationship in the book. Every supporting character, including the detective, has had their own relationships. And all of these relationships have become part of who they are. And that was another sort of theme of the book, is how our relationships change us and turn us into the people that we are. So I did a lot of research into all the different types of relationships, whether it was emotional abuse or psychological abuse, or I guess what we're calling toxic now. I'm not really sure what it is, but every time I ask someone what toxic means, they give me a different definition. So I really actually don't know what it means. And so I did a lot of research into the different types and how they're technically defined by therapists and psychologists and what have you. So I could understand what I was writing. And, nothing is binary. Nothing is all one thing or all another. And some characteristics show up in relationships and other parts of that definition wouldn't show up in that relationship. So it's all, life is in the gray zone. all of life is in the gray zone.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because Wes and Ivy, they are in the gray. As I'm reading, I'm like, wow, I have one opinion and then my opinion changes a little bit and then it flips back and it goes back and forth. And I'm like, I feel like I'm on the roller coaster with them.
Well, hopefully it's a fun ride.
Yeah, it was a fun ride. It was a fast roller coaster, let me tell you that. So did you learn anything about the crimes that they've committed or the police procedures, like while you were writing this story?
Yep. I knew that they had committed crimes, specifically one big crime that the detective is looking into. And I did research police procedures, but whenever I write a police person or a detective or a cop or whatever, they tend to be the kind that goes outside of the boundaries. So I've never been a cop or a detective, so I'm not as familiar with strict procedures, but once they go outside the lines and start doing things they're not supposed to do, then it becomes easier for me to write because then they're just doing whatever they want to do. And that becomes a little easier. This is why I don't ever have law enforcement as my main characters, because I can't write that properly. There's plenty of people out there writing those kind of stories that have a detective as the main character or a cop as the main character, and that's just not my thing.
Yeah, and I get that because the cop in this book was scribbling all outside of the lines, and I was okay with it. It didn't bother me at all. And you're right with the other way. If I'm reading something where the cop is the main character, I'm like, wait a minute, that wouldn't happen. Wait a minute. So it's much easier to accept the nonsense when they're not it.
Exactly.
Yeah, she was pretty much a complicated character too. She had her own motivations and stuff. Can you tell us a little bit how you developed her?
Absolutely. Yeah. She's a good example of someone that has, in my opinion, her goal is good, but her means of getting there, not so much. And so, does the ends justify the means kind of a thing. Her focus comes from her own relationships, and she gets dead set on a goal, and it may or may not be the right goal or the right idea. And then she has to figure out a way to get there. And I really wanted her to have a complicated backstory, that she wasn't just another cop, that she was a real person. And her name is Karen, and she's very aware of the meme that is out there about her name, and she uses it to her advantage. In terms of the name Karen, it's sort of the next evolution of it. We had the meme Karen, but now we have the actual Karens that are like, oh, okay, if that's the meme, I'm going to take advantage of that. I'm going to play that to my advantage.
Yeah, and she definitely does. Actually, all the side characters and secondary characters are pretty intense on one level or another, like the coworkers and everything. I'm like, wow, these are really fleshed out and thought out. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you went about deciding how these characters would fit into this world. Like, did you plot first, character first? How did you think about that?
Yeah, I don't plot anything. I'm a total pantser. I don't make outlines. I don't plot. In terms of the side characters, the way I look at it is people always have an opinion and have things to say about someone's relationship. So you think a relationship is between two people, but your friends give you opinions, your family gives you opinions, you should do this, you should do that, they're not good for you. I mean, everybody is involved in a relationship. There's more than two people. And so I created a cast of characters that are involved in Wes and Ivy's relationship, some innocently and some because they choose to insert themselves into that relationship. So Bianca is an assistant in Wes's office. And if you've ever been an assistant, as I have, assistants know everything. They may not tell you they know everything, but they see everything. They know everything about your personal life. They know who's looking for you, who wants to talk to you, who doesn't want to talk to you, and they are the gatekeepers. They are your gatekeeper. So they need to be on your side because they can really make or break you. Bianca happens to know more than most, but assistants are extremely powerful. And we don't have as many of them as we used to because of computers, and people do stuff themselves and they don't really need an assistant. But the assistants that are out there, I guarantee you, they are power players.
Oh, yeah, she went above and beyond. I would love to talk about Heath a little bit. Mm-hmm. He is such an interesting version of a best friend. I don't want to give any spoilers, but Ivy and Heath have a very different kind of relationship. How would you say their friendship is?
Yeah, when I was creating, Heath is her best friend, and I was kind of looked into stereotypes of best friends, especially when it's a male best friend to a woman. And rom-coms have very stereotypical best friends of, there's the gay man best friend, which is a stereotype in rom-coms. There are the best friends that are secretly in love with you. There's all these different types of best friends. And I was really trying to make Heath someone who was looking out for Ivy's best interest, sort of that one that was saying, what are you doing? Almost like if the reader was saying that, Heath would be saying it for you. What are you doing, Ivy? What are you doing in this relationship? Why do you keep doing this? So that someone was there being the voice of reason and not understanding the dramatic relationship that they have.
Yeah, Heath came off a little parental to me. Did you get?
Yeah.
Was it that vibe to you?
Yeah, definitely. He's definitely the kind of, and that's the flip side of that is you go too far with that and you become the arrogant guy who's telling a woman what to do. Mm-hmm. I know better than you, kind of a thing. So Heath can be interpreted a lot of different ways depending on the person reading the book.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. And if you guys are curious what I think about that, I'll be posting a review because I have words about Heath.
Fair enough.
Yes, but back to your writing style. You're a pantser. So I would love to know, how difficult was it to make that ending gel and that twist stick when you just kind of are flying by the seat of your pants?
Well, typically by the time I get about 2/3 through it, I get an idea of what I want the ending to be, and I can sort of adjust accordingly and revise the first part of it so that nothing seems out of whack. So the story sort of comes to me as I'm writing it, and it starts to open up and you get to know more of the characters and what have you. So usually I get a couple ideas for the ending, and then the one that feels right is the one that I end up writing by the time I get to the end of the book.
So did you just have one ending, or did you have multiple endings and you picked one?
No, I had multiple endings and I picked one.
I have to say, I didn't see the end coming, which I'm very impressed by, because reading so many domestic thrillers and stuff, you kind of become kind of desensitized and you can guess. But
Sure.
you got me on this one.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I love the ending.
That's an achievement.
Yes, it is. It always is when that happens.
It really is. I mean, thriller readers are smart, and thriller readers have read a lot of thrillers, and they're looking for it. I know they're looking for it. I'm doing the same thing when I read because I'm a thriller reader. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking for the clues. I'm looking for the possibilities. I'm looking for where you're going to try to trip me up and what your red herrings are. So I know thriller readers are looking for it. So it's my goal to be a little more clever.
Yes, you succeeded.
I mean, that's my job as a writer. Since my books are actually in print and out there, I hope to be just slightly more clever. Okay. So I can, and the way I look at it is, my books usually have more than one twist, mm-hmm. and you may figure out figure out some of them, but not all of them, mm-hmm. and hopefully not the ending. So if I can succeed in at least surprising you a few times in a thriller, that's good. That's the goal, I guess.
Yeah, that's success, I think. So in this case, did you find that you had to go back and sprinkle more things in, or did you nail it first time?
We always do revisions. I mean, my editor always has ways to make it better. And it's really, that's why it's so important to have an objective viewpoint coming in, because you're so close to it when you're the writer. You can't see it. Sometimes you overplay it and it becomes predictable, and sometimes you underplay it and it comes so out of nowhere it seems unreasonable. So walking that line between just enough and not too much is really where a good editor comes in and can say, yeah, I saw this coming a mile away, or wow, this was so out of nowhere, we need more for this.
Wow, that's cool. I like that. Because, we critique here on Shelf Addiction. So I always love when I am surprised, and I love to hear the insights behind that. Like, how do you make that happen? How, who checks the boxes? I like to hear that.
Exactly. And sometimes you miss, sometimes you miss and sometimes you hit it. So when you're writing multiple thrillers, you just hope that you can hit it every time. Try your best to hit it every time.
Yeah. And as a fellow thriller reader, how do you manage to separate what you're reading from what you're writing? Like, how do you keep the influence of what you're reading out of what you're writing?
Well, I typically do it at very different times of the day. I write early in the morning and I read at night. So they're completely separate in my brain as much as possible. And that's the only way I know how to do it, is never to be doing the same things at the same time, and never to be reading anything that's similar to what you're writing in terms of, if it's a story about a couple, then I'm not going to go read another thriller about a couple. Or if it's a thriller about siblings, I'm not going to go read another thriller about siblings. So to keep those totally different, so even the type of storyline is different, even if it is a thriller.
That's smart. I like that. I would like to ask, I love a cute cover and an awesome title, and this has both. Like, did you have any say, or did you have any suggestions when it came to this cover or the title? Was this yours or someone else's?
The title, no, actually my original title for the book was Always Have, Always Will. And then they thought it sounded a little too romancy, and people might get confused and think it was an actual romance book and not a thriller. So they came up with this that lets people know it's a thriller, because the word twist or twisty is always connected to thrillers. And then the cover, we went through a couple of them, just trying to get that blend of, relationship and thriller. And I love this, that they're grabbing the roses and they're falling. There's like a motion. There's an actual motion to the cover with the petals falling, and they're a little blurred because they're in movement.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly something either Wes or Ivy would do, would be to crush a flower like that. So it seemed perfect for the characters.
Oh yeah, they're over the top with their shenanigans, and I could see a room full of these flowers just crushed on the floor or something crazy.
Right? Me too.
They are absolutely nuts, and I love it. So also, I got a chance to check out the audiobook, and we love audiobooks here on Shelf Addiction. So Carissa Vacker is the narrator. Did you help pick her? How did she end up narrating?
Yes, she actually was the narrator for my second book. He started it. And I loved her. I think she's a fantastic narrator. So when they suggested her, I said, yes, definitely. I think she's great at it. And she has a way of changing her voice and sounding completely different from book to book. And yes. I think she's great. Yeah. And in fact, it was picked as one of Apple's must listen books, and one of Audible's editors' pick for, but it had both of them. So Carissa did an amazing job. Everybody loves the audiobook.
Yeah, she's a superstar. So the fact that you got to use her twice is awesome. She did a really good job from what I heard. Yeah. Now, I'd like to ask this sometimes when authors have several books, and I know it's like picking a favorite child. But do you have one of your books that you feel the most pride and joy about?
It's always the book I'm working on, because my goal is always to write a better book. So it's always the next book that's my favorite, and then it'll be the next. So right now it's the one I'm writing right now, and then it'll be the next one I'm writing. Because I, as a writer, I always want to improve, and I want every book to be better than the last. So
yeah.
That's always
Definitely.
the goal. Whether readers may have their own opinions, and that's fine, of what book they prefer, and that's great. But for me, it's always the next book.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that because, you know, I feel like you're on my auto buy now. Like every time I see your name, I'm like, oh,
Hey.
yes, something new. What's it going to be this time?
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah. So, okay. So we will finish up with our infamous lightning round. It's a this or that version of a Q&A. So you don't have a lot of time to think about your answers.
Okay.
And the only rule is that you must pick one or the other. You can't be like neither or both.
Okay.
You gotta pick.
Okay.
Okay, are you ready?
Ready.
Okay, I'm gonna set a timer so I don't go over.
Okay.
All right. Physical books or ebooks?
Physical.
Hero or villain?
Villain.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Name a book that you've read in one sitting this year.
Ooh, The Drowning Woman by Robin Harding.
Milk chocolate or dark chocolate?
Milk chocolate.
Dogs or cats?
Cats.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
Marvel or DC?
DC.
Name one auto-buy author.
Mary Kubica.
All right. And sweet or salty?
Sweet.
Okay, there we go. My alarm was going off.
But I should have said it should have been both. It should have been both. But sweet.
I'm a salty girl myself, but every once in a while I do like to mix them. I can't deny.
They're
So.
both great. Same with dogs and cats. Both great. I love them both.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, thanks so much for dropping in today and sharing with us about A Twisted Love Story. Again, you guys, it's out right now. Pick up your copy. Don't forget to check out the audiobook if you like the audiobook. And thanks again, Samantha, for coming through. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me back. It was great to talk to you again. Great to see you again.
Yes. Oh, you guys, if you don't know, you can see us on Patreon. So if you want to see it, come on over to Patreon and check us out. So that's it for today. We'll end things there. Take care. See you next time. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to show your support, there are a few things you can do. Head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a positive 5-star review, or like this episode on your favorite podcast player. It seems so simple, but it really helps me out. You can share this podcast with other book nerd friends or on your favorite social media space. You can also join the Shelf Addiction Patreon family. For as little as $2 a month, you will help us produce even more awesome content for your ears. You can also consider joining the Shelf Addiction official Facebook group, where we talk all things bookish and more in a safe space. The Shelf Addiction podcast is a part of the Nerdy Maven network. You can also reach us via email at info@shelfaddiction.com. Thank you for listening.